Yowza.
Yeah.
So what was the shot that you could tell that it's really him doing that? I mean, that's a lot of G-forces on his face. You can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, he did all that, and we. The real challenge with this scene was how when to intercut with the young pilots, and some of that stuff was pickups that we did because I didn't have quite the right energy and emotion on them, so we went back and did some extra coverage on them reacting, and all the kind of subtle looks between Warlock sitting at the back and listening to the guys, and Warlock's kind of cheering Maverick on. Cyclone is furious because he's been proved wrong, John Hamm, and the way it all comes down on him. And so it was finding that balance. The score was really difficult to find. We it's not kind of what you would expect necessarily for that kind of scene, the score. It's the whole movie we based it around very much about how the characters are feeling. How the characters are feeling rather than how you necessarily want the audience to feel, So we're reflecting how the young pilots are feeling watching Maverick do this. And the sound mix was incredibly complicated, and is obviously a lot of the reason that you feel connected with, how the jets are moving, and you feeling like you're a pilot in there with Maverick. You're feeling like you're in an F-18. We mixed. The sound mix was extremely time-consuming. Every time the jet articulates, you can hear the sounds of the vapes on the wings, and the whole. If you're in Dolby Atmos, the whole room rotates around. So it's really cool. I don't know. It took this scene was, because it's kind of straight, quite linear. It was quite easy to build, and we did about 6 takes of him going through the canyon, but really, Tom kept, and there was only one Navy pilot who was allowed to fly Tom through that canyon, and they are going, I would say 650 miles an hour through there. It's incredibly dangerous, and the pilot was like the captain of the Blue Angels. He was the only guy who was allowed, and Tom was like, "Come on, let's go lower and faster, and it's got to look even more. It's got to look so impressive." And it was a Friday afternoon on the last day when we were filming, and I think he basically broke all the rules to get what you see in the movie. Like, he went faster than the air boss had given him permission to go.
Wow.
And he pulled more G's than he was supposed to. And of course, the F-18 records everything the pilots do, so they can't just pretend that they didn't do it,
Right.
But everyone got back safely on that Friday, and I remember sitting in, at the I think it was in Fallon, and watching that coverage. So they would land, the jets would land, they would take the cards out of the cameras, and they would put them in a playback, and we would all of us would sit and watch it, like 20 of us would sit and watch it. And when we saw that, you see right at the end when you can see the shadow of the jet on the mountain.
That was cool.
It's so, I can't tell you how dangerous that is. And yet Tom was, like, yes, we got it, it's awesome. And so that's what you see in the movie, and we're using... we had 4 cameras pointing at Tom in the cockpit, 2 over the Top Gun pilot's shoulder. So in order to, and I wanted to make sure that the sequence was dynamic constantly. And anytime there was air, so anytime Tom was not kind of actively, articulating the plane through, I would kind of cut to another angle and chop out like 12 or 18 frames of air just to make sure that it was constantly moving all the way through. So I also want to recognize this was an incredibly difficult film to edit. It was 2 years of work, and the film evolved constantly, and we went back and reshot scenes that weren't working, and the days when we were filming the aerial sequences were long. I have 3 assistants in the audience. I want you to give them all a round of applause. Okay, yeah. All right. So yeah, Matt Sweat, Laura Creasy, and Emily Rail Russell, just stand up so everyone can say hello. Well done,
Good
everybody.
work.
Yeah, there they are. They were so cool. You might and I'm so pleased. Travis, who was also here, he wasn't able to be here today, but those guys did, supported me. I also want to acknowledge there was a point where they were filming so much footage every day. There was one day that they had 27 cameras running. I know some of you may have heard me tell this story, but I got over 24 hours of dailies in a single day. And I just thought, because they were filming on 4 jets and they had 2 units filming on the ground, and I just thought I'm going to fail because I can't get through this, and I said to Jerry Bruckheimer and Tom Cruise, you need to bring someone else on to help me because I'm really struggling here, and I wanted to do it. But I wasn't sleeping, and my health was really suffering because I care so much about it, and I wanted it to be awesome. And I would wake up every day at 3 a.m. and all I would think about is close-ups of Phoenix and Hangman and Rooster, and And so Stephen Mirioni, who's a legend, came on and helped me for several months. So I want to acknowledge him, and also Chris Lebenson came on to help me. And Stephen is very humble. Yeah. And does not take a credit on the film unless he does the entire movie. And he's not even in the end credit roller. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that, he really helped us crack certain challenging parts of the movie. And Chris Lebenson came and did a lot of, helped out on certain sequences that needed a lot of, kind of reinvention.
Right.
And so it was a team effort. And also, Tom Cruise is heavily involved in post-production on the movies, and he has final cut, basically, on all his films, has done for many years. And so he works very closely with Joe Kosinski. Jerry Bruckheimer's obviously, he knows how to tell a story, so he was very helpful, and Chris McQuarrie, the writer and producer. So everybody, it was a team effort, and even though everything went through my fingertips on my Avid Media Composer, that what my team did was extraordinary. They spent a long time breaking down aerial footage and notating every time a pilot looked left or every time someone said a line. And the challenging thing with this movie is because they're wearing masks, you can just put any lines in their mouth at all. So every line was recorded 70 or 80 times to get the intonation exactly right. And rewritten. And I was constantly stealing close-ups from like a whole other aerial sequence and putting them in. So that shot where Maverick's saying, Maverick going into range control and stuff, that was stolen from another scene where it was just something where he looked like he had intense eye acting and, all that stuff. So it was a gigantic jigsaw puzzle, and we had, nobody on the planet thinks making a sequel to Top Gun is a good idea, right? It's that simple. And I knew that the entire world would be sitting with their arms crossed going, what are you doing? When they were coming to sit and watch this movie. So we all felt the pressure of delivering every day for 2 years, and I desperately wanted it to be, to not disappoint people, because I was a fan of the original, so a funny story about a test screening is that we only did 2 test screenings, and it was before the pandemic. The movie wasn't finished, the score wasn't done, the sound mix wasn't really done, and so it was quite early in the process. It was probably, 8 or 9 months before we finished the movie. And we got to the end of the test screening, and in the focus group, one guy put his hand up and he said, hey, I just want to say that Top Gun is the best film ever made, and no movie's better than Top Gun, all right? And we all just sat at the back going,
here it comes.
This is not. And he said, but I will say this movie is as good as Top Gun. And I was like, okay, that's it, we've succeeded. I was so pleased. And I knew that it wasn't as good as it was going to be, because I knew we still had like 7 months to go.
Right.
And I was very confident that it would improve. And the other thing is that, again, like Paul, lockdown was invaluable for us to be able to not be under enormous pressure to hit a release date.
Right.
Which is, when you're working on movies like this where you've got a release date coming and there is so much money being spent by the studio on marketing, and you're feeling like you don't really have time to breathe and, look at the movie and feel it properly. And because everyone kind of went home and we took our foot off the gas, we had an extra sort of 3 months to stress test literally every frame, every shot, every emotional beat, and the score, and really make sure that the film flowed, like we were talking about, making it flow effortlessly. So it's a seamless emotional experience, mostly from Maverick's point of view through the film. It's a very subjective film, and that guided how we cut the scene. Everything was from Maverick's point of view, where it could be. So lockdown actually really helped us dial in the visual effects, of which there are lots in Top Gun. You may not realize this, but you know, when people say what were the visual effects, well, the whole Mark 10 plane isn't a real plane, you know, and no F-14s fly anywhere in the world. So they are actually in an F-18 for the whole final like dogfight of the movie, and the visual effects are used to strip out the cockpit and reskin with an F-14 cockpit, and it's effortlessly done. You can't tell that it's not an F-14 that they're flying, and it's very exciting because when we screened the movie for the Navy, right, I would say, I mean, everyone I met in the Navy who was like in a commanding officer position was there because of the original Top Gun, and they had all flown F-14s. And I remember when I first read the script and I found the scene where Maverick and Rooster steal the F-14 behind enemy lines and they have a dogfight against two Su-57s. I just remember thinking, this is the most awesome scene, and if we can pull this off, it will be so immensely entertaining and satisfying for the audience. And to watch all these F-14 parts, all the F-14s are like, you know, no one flies them anymore. There's like two in Iran and one in a museum, which is the one we used to film on the ground. We pulled one out of a museum. So when Maverick and Rooster steal the F-14, they're in the shell basically, and the engines were all done with CG, and it's being towed along a runway, but. They got so emotional watching an F-14 fly again. And Tom was all about the authenticity, so every switch that he clicks and everything that he does when he's starting up the F-14 in that final mission is exactly what a pilot would do. And so they were so thrilled, and it was enormously gratifying, you know, for those, you know, those naval commanders to be, you know, as enthusiastic about the movie as we hoped they would be.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. We
Please.
have just 2 more minutes, you guys.
Okay.
Is the sequence 2 minutes and 15?
So that it's very close to 2:15, but we've learned that time in movies. Obviously, we're time lords as editors. It's like one of the greatest. It's one of the greatest. One of the greatest gifts. It's one of the greatest powers we have to manipulate time and slow time and speed up time. Obviously, your clip is very. I mean, all of the clips that we've seen. The way that you jump through time and the way that you know compressed and slow, I mean, all that it's what we love to do. And one of the things I've learned about time is that the audience, if you actually say a time to the audience, it has an instant psychological effect on how they perceive the next kind of few minutes of the movie. So in Mission Impossible Fallout, there's a scene where the villain kind of sets a detonation for 15 minutes. And it's 22 minutes in the movie, but it's 15. You know, the audience thinks it's 15 minutes, and it feels like just about like 15 minutes. But and Chris McQuarrie said, you know, we should really set the timer to 20 minutes. And I was like, Chris, okay, I will do it because it's an experiment, and we got to try everything. But I have a hunch that in a week we'll be putting all the timers back to 15 minutes. So we did a screening where it was 20 minutes, and everyone went, oh my God, that movie just went on forever. 20 minutes, it just like that. And the moment I set the timer to 15 minutes, no one had a problem with it. Because no, I changed nothing else. I mean, maybe I compressed it by like 30 seconds overall, but the point was the psychological effect of that 20 minutes. Also, it's the end of a long movie, and everyone's desperate to go to the loo, and you know they're just thinking, I've got 5 more minutes. So we tried it, and then we ended up with 15 because it, you know, psychologically it has an impact. But yeah, it's pretty close, I think, Matt. Right? Like it's 2:20 or something. It's very close to 2:15.
We're out of time. Congratulations to all you guys, and good luck tomorrow. Amazing work. Amazing work.